1 Peter chapter 4 turns with clarity and urgency toward the way believers are to live in the shadow of Christ's suffering and in light of the approaching end of all things. The chapter begins by calling Christians to arm themselves with the same mindset that Christ had in his suffering, not as passive resignation, but as a deliberate choice to live no longer for human desires, but for the will of God. Suffering, in this sense, becomes a dividing line. It marks a break from the past and signals a new way of life shaped by purpose rather than by impulse. There is a strong sense of contrast in this chapter, between the old life and the new, between human judgment and divine authority. Peter reminds his readers that they once lived according to the patterns of the world, indulging in whatever brought pleasure or escape. Now, though, they are misunderstood and even maligned for no longer participating in those things. But this rejection is not without meaning. The judgment of others pales beside the reality that God alone holds the final word over life and death. The gospel, Peter says, was even preached to those who have since died, showing that God's reach and justice are wider than human understanding. As the letter moves forward, it shifts again toward how believers are to treat one another within the community of faith. If the end is near, then life must be lived with sober-minded love. Prayer, hospitality, and the faithful use of each person's gifts become the heartbeat of the church. These are not extraordinary tasks, but they are offered as acts of service to one another and as expressions of God's grace working through ordinary people. In this way, even small acts take on eternal weight when done in love and dependence on God. The chapter returns to the theme of suffering, now urging believers not to be surprised when trials come, but to see them as a sharing in Christ's own story. To suffer as a Christian, Peter writes, is not a cause for shame but for rejoicing, because it aligns one with Christ's glory. There is a sense that these trials are refining, and that judgment begins with the household of God, not as condemnation, but as a means of purification. In the face of hardship, the faithful are called to entrust themselves to their Creator by continuing to do good, even when the cost is high. 1 Peter chapter 4 is both sobering and encouraging. It offers a vision of life shaped by purpose, love, and endurance, where suffering is not the end but a passage into deeper faithfulness. It challenges believers to live deliberately, to serve one another faithfully, and to trust God fully, knowing that everything done in His name holds eternal significance.